Over the last 20 years, with all your support, we've been able to not only launch the original MyPillow, but also the MyPillow mattress topper, Giza Dream bed sheets, My Slippers, and the MyPillow bath towels. But there's so much more. In fact, we have over 200 products, and I'm so confident that you'll love each and every one of them that when you go to MyPillow.com now, you'll immediately receive a free gift valued at $20 just for checking out the website. No purchase necessary. Get everything from MyPillow blankets, sleepwear, kitchen towels, mattresses, duvets, pet beds, body pillows, comforters, couch pillows, bathrobes, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And remember, just for checking out MyPillow.com, you'll immediately receive a free gift valued at $20. No purchase necessary. This is a limited time promotion, so go to MyPillow.com now.
From the heart of our nation's capital, here's Family Research Council President Tony Perkins.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Washington Watch. I'm Joseph Backholm, sitting in for Tony today. So grateful that you have chosen to spend a few minutes with us for today's special education edition of Washington Watch. Few issues are more important than the education and discipleship of our children. And these days, few issues generate more passion than education policy. How do we give families more options? What are the best alternatives? Who should be in control of curriculum? Do government schools need to be reformed or abandoned, or both? That's what we're going to discuss in today's program. We'll talk about why we're seeing growth in school choice programs around the country, and we'll talk about the growth in homeschooling as well, and whether that's possible for your family, even if you aren't a professional educator. And at the end of the program, we'll talk about the most important part of all of it. Education is not just about education. For Christians, it's about discipleship. Our job as Christian parents is to do everything we can to help our children grow to be disciples of Jesus, who then go on to make more disciples of Jesus. How can we do that most effectively? We're thankful you've joined us for this great conversation, so let's get started. Since the COVID-19 pandemic opened the eyes of many parents to the radical, hypersexual, and divisive content that has found its way into the curriculum across America's schools, there has been a lot more engagement by those concerned for our nation's children. All over the country, parents and concerned citizens have said enough is enough. What kind of difference has this made in our education system so far? And so many of you are still looking for ways to make a difference in education. What should you be doing? What resources are available to help you do it? Joining me now with all the answers is FRC's Senior Fellow for Education Studies, Meg Kilgannon, who served in the U.S. Department of Education in the Trump administration. She joins me in studio. Meg, good to see you today.
It's great to be here.
And I've already told everyone that you have all the answers, so our expectations are very high.
I was alarmed at that description.
Well, we're optimistic. We believe in you. And Meg, to start off, what's happened in the last couple of years? We know that people have become much more engaged. People have learned things about the curriculum. We talk about CRT. We talk about what is legitimately pornography inside sex education curriculum. We know that many teachers are now teaching kids that they can change their gender if they want to. All of this has agitated parents who discovered that this was happening in many cases for the first time. They've begun to take action. We've seen elections determined. Virginia, that whole state, their political landscape got flipped because of this issue. We've seen people running for school boards. How would you describe the impact so far by the engagement from parents?
Well, it's been overwhelming, and the proof of that is the fact that the Department of Justice agreed with the Department of Education and essentially classified parents as domestic terrorists for speaking out at school board meetings. So that tells you that the energy that's out there and the engagement of people in these affairs is having a significant impact. The pandemic, the school closures, the summer of riots during 2020, the election, all of those things contributed to the waking up, essentially, of what had been a very trusting, I think, citizenry. Yeah. And we realized that the institutions that we built to educate our children had been overtaken by really progressive radicals, essentially. And so when we engage in the system to try to reverse that, that's somehow seen as us fighting a culture war, right? We're starting a culture war when in fact we're just responding to the war that's being waged on our children.
I think that's the correct characterization of this. You mentioned that one of the impacts, one of the results of the activism so far is that parents have earned the label of domestic terrorists by the Department of Justice. And of course, they've since walked that back significantly. So we should note that. But what other impacts have we seen policy-wise? Do you feel like school administrators at the federal to the local level are getting the message from parents, or do they still see parents as a problem that they need to solve?
I think there's a certain level of viewing of parents as not quite being on the team in our education system today, and that's unfortunate. I know that as a parent who I at one point homeschooled my kids, then we had children in Catholic school, we had children in public school, and the attitude towards the parents in the public school was very much, we're the educators, we're the experts, you're the parents, we're the experts, let us handle the education. We've got this, don't worry about what's happening here. We've got it well in hand because we're the experts and we know what's best for your kids. And it's been great to see that parents are no longer accepting that answer from their school. They understand, parents, you are the best expert on your child, and you know what's best for your child, and you need to be engaged in the system so that your wishes and your rights and your children's rights are respected in that system.
Now, recently on Washington Watch, we've highlighted what's going on in the university system as well, specifically in the education programs, and how this really is being pushed in master's degree programs, the education in universities, in education, as well as just undergraduate programs that get teacher certification. In your opinion, can we solve the challenges that we see happening in our elementary and high schools without addressing the university system, or are those so connected that in order to get the results we want in our local elementary school, we really have to reform our university system as well?
We absolutely must have a pipeline of teachers who understand that their job is to educate children, not to indoctrinate them. Right. And the only way that can happen is if the teachers themselves have not been indoctrinated by a university system that is captured. And we're dealing right now with a situation where there are state funds being spent to indoctrinate students in, racist ideology, queer theory, all of those things. And so this is a tremendous need to reform that system, but also to make sure that our Christian colleges and universities are not similarly captured, because we're all swimming in the same pool of educational resources, unfortunately. So the rot that's happening in the state-funded systems is going to impact our Christian colleges and universities, and we must be on guard and be very watchful of those so that the teachers that are coming out of those systems are truly different, transformational figures.
I think there's an awareness that this is a really long-term project we've embarked on, right? The schools didn't get to the point where they were telling kindergartners that they can choose whether to be boys or girls overnight, right? Correct. That didn't happen like a Monday morning staff meeting. This is the new agenda, folks, right?
Feels
this
like
took
it, but it took a long time. It
feels like it, but it took a long time, right? And so the path back is also going to take a long time. But if we've been on that path, or maybe we've just started on that path for the last 12, 24 months, however we want to refer to that, what are the signs of progress that you see? What's the evidence that you see that change is possible, change is happening, and that we really are on a journey to making things better?
I have two stories for you. One is an email that we got from our intercessor prayer team, and they had been contacted by a member of a school board in a state that we will not name, who had asked for prayer, and particularly around the issue of what the school policy would be regarding the use of pronouns, as one example of the things that we'd been asked to pray for. And that had been a big debate on that school board. And we got an email recently saying that, in fact, the superintendent announced that there would be no pronoun policy. They would not be including pronouns in their emails and in their solicitations, and that they weren't going to go down the path that was being advocated by the LGBT,
Yes.
Incorporated that's out there right now for schools. So that's a bit of evidence I have that things are changing. Then on one of our resources on the frcaction.org/schools webpage is an election report from November of 2021. And on that report, Amy Covey from Kansas talked about her experience as a candidate and shared some of her thoughts about what she wanted to accomplish as then an elected school board member. Well, to bring you up to speed, Amy was disappointed when the Kansas state legislature did not pass a parents' rights protection bill, as so many states have in the last year. So she developed one that in the form of a school board resolution for her school system, and they passed it 4-3. It was a contentious vote. It was a big debate, but she got that done. And we are hearing story after story about things like that, Joseph, where the people who felt called by God to run for office and who have answered that call and run are able, in some cases, to make really big contributions on behalf of children and American values. And that is exactly why we're encouraging people to be engaged at the local level. It's so important and so consequential.
And I think because we have to play the long game in this, we're talking thousands of school districts across the country. It might even be tens of thousands of school districts.
14,000.
Okay, 14,000. And it's the little things that moms and dads and grandparents are just kind of taking up in their little part of the garden that begins to make the difference. And what you don't see is, because it's school district and school board one at a time, that doesn't happen overnight. You don't see the impact of that change overnight. But what we know is that we will not see the change that we're looking for if people are not doing that. And Meg, I want to ask you this question, because you track these things closely. If you could change one thing about our education system, whether it's the environment or the system itself, what would that be that you think would create a better result for our system?
Well, I think I would strengthen the family, first of all, because when children are going into school from a broken home, from a family that's struggling, whether that's economically or emotionally or whatever it is, you're going to have a problem from go. So if we have strong families, that means that parents are able to be engaged at the school system. It means that they are regarded as the resource for their children that they should be, and not able to be demeaned by educators in that sense. Right. And so I think that would be the one thing I would improve.
Well, that fixes so many things, right? It fixes the education problem, but the trickle-down effect of that is cannot be overstated. But Meg, for those who are watching who want to do something about this, they've been motivated. What resources are you offering, the FRC's offering, to help parents and families really make a difference in their local community when it comes to the education system? We have tons of things on our website at frcaction.org/schools. So please visit there, especially a new fundraising resource on, if you're thinking of running for school board, how can you raise money for your campaign? Meg Kilgannon, as always, we appreciate your wisdom and your time today. Thanks so much for being with us. Thanks for having me. And we are going to continue this, and do check out those resources because you really are the solution. We are both the problem and the solution. And if we don't like the way it is, we've got to do something about it Coming up next in our education special conversation, school choice has become all the rage, a lot more choice. We're going to talk about why that is. Where's this choice coming from? What is the best choice? And as always, what can you do about it? Stay with us here on Washington Watch. Everything we do begins as an idea. Before there can be acts of courage, there must be the belief that some things are worth sacrificing for. Before there can be marriage, there is the idea that man should not be alone. Before there was freedom, there was the idea that individuals are created equal. It's true that all ideas have consequences, but we're less aware that all consequences are the fruit of ideas. Before there was murder, there was hate. Before there was a Holocaust, there was the belief by some people that other people are undesirable. Our beliefs determine our behavior, and our beliefs about life's biggest questions determine our worldview. Where did I come from? Who decides what is right and wrong? What happens when I die? Our answers to these questions explain why people see the world so differently. Debates about abortion are really disagreements about where life gets its value. Debates over sexuality and gender and marriage are really disagreements about whether the rules are made by us or for us. What we think of as political debates are often much more than that. They're disagreements about the purpose of our lives and the source of truth. As Christians, our goal must be to think biblically about everything. Our goal is to help you see beyond red and blue, left and right, to see the battle of ideas at the root of it all. Our goal is to equip Christians with a biblical worldview and help them advance and defend the faith in their families, communities, and the public square. Cultural renewal doesn't begin with campaigns and elections. It begins with individuals turning from lies to truth. But that won't happen if people can't recognize a lie and don't believe truth exists. We want to help you see the spiritual war behind the political war, the truth claims behind the press release, and the forest from the trees. Welcome to Washington Watch. I'm Joseph Backholm, sitting in for Tony today, and this is a special education edition of Washington Watch, and you can find this in every episode of Washington Watch at tonyperkins.com. Since COVID-19 hit America in early 2020, a growing number of parents have decided to reroute the educational paths of their children. In the 2 years following the outbreak of COVID, more than 1.2 million students left America's public school system. Major U.S. cities in particular have seen notable declines in public school enrollment. Now, if you are a parent of a child in the public school system and are thinking about venturing outside for the first time, what options are available to you? With me here to talk about it is Ginny Gentles, the director of the Education Freedom Center at the Independent Women's Forum. Ginny served as a senior political appointee in the U.S. Department of Education under President George W. Bush. She also led the Florida Department of Education's Office of Independent Education and Parental Choice. Ginny, good to see you today.
Hello, good to see you.
Now, to start, I mentioned the 1.2 million children who have left the public school system since COVID began. Where did they all go?
Well, Unfortunately, there are too many children who are unaccounted for, and they just left the system and have disappeared. And these are generally the low-income kids, kids who were being very poorly served by the government system before COVID, and then were abandoned by the system. So there are quite a few students that we can account for that school districts just don't know where they went. But there are a number of students who have had happy endings to their education tale, and they've ended up in charter schools, in faith-based private schools, and in homeschooling or microschooling environments. And these are alternatives that existed, again, before COVID, but parents were pushed and incentivized to go find them and enroll their children, and that's where their kids have landed.
For those parents who are finding other options, is there one option that most parents are flocking to? Is it an even distribution between homeschool and private school and charter schools? What's the ratio?
Well, what it looks like is that charter school enrollment went up by 7% before this past school year. So as kids were enrolled in the government assigned public schools, the parents looked around and realized, hey, the charter schools in my area, which are also publicly funded, are open and are prioritizing academics. We want to put our kid over there. And so for the charter schools that did not have waiting lists, parents were able to move over to these public charter schools. And so we saw a 7% increase across the board for charter school enrollment nationwide. Catholic school enrollment saw increases for the first time in 2 decades, and the largest increase in 50 years. And I believe the increase was somewhere around 3.8% overall. But you could look at some areas of the country and see much higher increases of Catholic school enrollment. And so charter school enrollment, very high increase, Catholic school enrollment, high as well. And then homeschooling went through the roof. The numbers doubled in the midst of the pandemic. Parents just said, never mind, I'm not doing this remote education anymore. And they went to homeschooling. And so that increased so that about 11% of households were homeschooling. So really, I can't tell you which one got the most. It seems like it is a pretty even spread across the different options.
And we are in our next segment going to delve into the homeschool situation. But you mentioned there the growth in charter schools. And one of the obvious benefits of charter schools is that they are also publicly funded. It doesn't require a family to pay tuition. But we've also seen a growth and expansion of school choice programs. 2 years ago, West Virginia passed what was at that time the most comprehensive school choice bill in the country. Arizona this year has passed an even more comprehensive school choice bill. Ohio looks to be doing precisely what Arizona just did. Do you think we're on the verge of a total reform in the way we do education in the country?
I think we're in the midst of it. 2021 really was the year of school choice, and we saw close to 20 states either expand or create new private school choice options. Before the pandemic, there were only 5 states with education savings accounts, and we can delve into what those are. And now there are 10. And as you mentioned, Arizona has a universal education savings account program. That's huge. The program went from serving a quarter of the state students to all of them. So over 1 million Arizona students are eligible for these education savings accounts. They can access funds and enroll in the education option that's the best fit for them. So we're in the midst of a remaking of the way that education is funded, and the shift is underway to fund students rather than systems, and to ensure that the funding flows with the student and follows the student to the best education option to meet their needs.
We're speaking with Ginny Gentles. Ginny, where do you see the biggest growth happening in the next few years? We've talked about these range of options. There's charter, there's public, there's homeschooling. What's your projection about the future?
I absolutely think that we're going to see a growth in the education savings account as a mechanism for funding these options. So to step back from which option is going to get the most funding, I think that the priority should be on how the funding flows and that education savings account, the ability for a family to access the state funding and draw down funds from an account. I think that's where we're going to see the growth. There's no way that Governor DeSantis is going to let Arizona be the head of the leader in school choice options. I think that we'll probably see something like universal ESAs in Florida, which is already a huge school choice state. But really, if we're drilling down a little and looking at the different school choice options, I think that there's going to be a significant increase in faith-based private schools, and we can keep an eye on that. I mentioned the Catholic schools, but let's acknowledge that 2/3 of the 30,000 private schools in the U.S. are faith-based, and those are schools that are going to prioritize academics. They're going to prioritize character, discipline, all the things that have been thrown out the window in the government education system. And you know that parents are flocking to those options now and just need those education savings accounts and other mechanisms to do that.
Jeannie, in about 15 seconds, where can parents go to get more information about the situation in their school or in their state, about school choice?
Well, I encourage parents to follow our Education Freedom Center, iwf.org/EFC. I also encourage them to go to National School Choice Week or American Federation for Children for state-by-state breakdowns on all the education options that are available in their states.
Jeannie Gentles, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Coming up, the homeschooling movement has also seen a lot of growth. We'll talk about whether that's a good option for you when we come back here on Washington Watch.
All of us are born with the desire to find truth and meaning. Where did I come from? What happens when I die? While our answers to these questions may divide us, we are united in our need for the freedom to answer life's biggest questions and make life's biggest decisions for ourselves. That's why religious freedom matters for everyone. Religious freedom matters because the powerful have long wanted to control those who are less powerful. Religious freedom matters because the freedom of those who are different is often threatened by those who believe different is dangerous. Leah Sheribu, a Christian teenager in Nigeria, remains a captive of Boko Haram for her refusal to renounce her Christian faith. Chinese pastor Wang Yi is serving a 9-year sentence for speaking publicly against the Chinese government. In Pakistan, Asif Pervez is on death row for allegedly sending a blasphemous text message. All of this because people in power decided different is dangerous. At the Center for Religious Liberty at Family Research Council, we promote religious freedom for everyone because the only alternative is religious freedom for no one. We encourage Americans and the American government to engage and advocate for the persecuted, and they do. We work every day to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. We do it because that's what Jesus does. We work to give freedom to others because we ourselves have been set free.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm Joseph Backholm, and you are watching a special education edition of Washington Watch. The coronavirus pandemic sparked a dramatic increase in homeschooling across the nation and really around the world. The trend of parents opting to go into full homeschool mode even caught the attention of the Associated Press, which published an article a year ago titled, quote, "Sparked by Pandemic Fallout, Homeschooling Surges Across the U.S." Some researchers at the time predicted the number of parents homeschooling would decrease significantly after the schools fully opened, but it appears the percentage has remained quite stable. So if you're currently homeschooling, know that you are part of a growing movement. And if you're thinking about it, well, my next guest has some insights that may be helpful to you. Joining me now is Jim Mason, president of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Jim, welcome to Washington Watch.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
You've been in this homeschooling game for a long time. Based on that perspective, how do you see the pandemic and the events of the last couple of years impacting homeschooling in America?
Well, as you mentioned, a lot of people began homeschooling because of the pandemic, when everybody was staying home, including children and parents. And the biggest effect is that a lot of people who kind of chose homeschooling for reasons other than education discovered that they really liked it, that they really enjoyed having their kids with them and to be present during those learning moments. So we're seeing a lot of people stick with homeschooling that may not have even started if it hadn't been for the pandemic.
Jim, how many of those people who started during the pandemic have continued?
That's a really good question. And the data is kind of just now coming in. Sometime in the middle of the pandemic, the Census Bureau started keeping track of households that had homeschooled children. And about this time last year, it was 11% of households had at least one child homeschooling. And the data just out this month shows that it's about 9%. Now, a lot of people are just entering the school year. So in the coming weeks and months, we'll learn more about how many stuck with it. But it appears that quite a few did.
Now, a lot of people were schooling at home because that was the only option that they had. And many were still trying to remote learn using their local classroom and oftentimes their public school. Has the definition of homeschool changed in any of this? And is any of that influencing our perception that homeschooling has changed? Or is this exclusively a function of people who have just withdrawn from the government system and now they're educating at home?
Well, the definition of homeschooling is kind of a fluid thing. People who teach their kids at home, think of themselves as homeschooling almost, for sure. We advocate for a version of homeschooling that's privately funded, private homeschooling. What the pandemic did, though, was it unleashed a lot of entrepreneurial spirit and a lot of new innovative approaches to education, even kind of private approaches to teaching your own kids. So learning pods and things like that were not really a thing before the pandemic. So a lot of, and we at Homeschool Legal Defense really support private options where parents are really directly involved in the education of their children. And some of those things look a little different today.
Yeah. Now, a lot of parents who might be watching today, they love the idea of homeschool, but they feel totally unequipped themselves to do it. They just feel like, that's for other people. I can't pull this off. What would you say to them?
I would say if you're interested and dedicated, that you would be surprised at just how able you are to do it. Almost everyone I know back in the day began homeschooling with a similar attitude, even those who were very interested and committed to it. My wife and I, for example, 30 years ago said, well, we'll try this for a year and see how it goes. And once you get started, it's not as hard as you think, especially if you're really committed to it. And just the joy that you get from doing it will sustain you in those outer years. So we ended up homeschooling 7 children from start to finish, but we started out trying it 1 year at a time.
Yeah. And Jim, tell us a bit more than that. You obviously have a lot of experience with this, 7 children. What would you say are the benefits of homeschooling?
Oh, gosh, probably the single most important benefit is the relationships you develop with your children. I encourage people not to think of homeschooling as kind of a little public school at home, but just having your kids be around you all day long, and relationships with siblings and neighbors and others in your social, church groups and the like. It's really the biggest benefit from my perspective is my 7 children and my wife and I are just as close as you could be. I have 7 adult children now, and the siblings all really care for each other a lot, as well as their mom and dad. And they've all done fine educationally too, and pursuing, good careers. But those relationships are hard to replace.
Yeah, that is the truth. And I think that's the hope of every parent, is that their kids will love each other and the family when they are adults. But Jim, very quickly, in about 30 seconds, where would you send parents who are looking for more information, more resources, who may want to do this for themselves?
Our website at Homeschool Legal Defense Association, hslda.org, is just a treasure trove of all kinds of information, how to get started, helpful webinars on a vast array of topics, lots of help getting started legally, so you make sure you follow your state's laws to avoid difficulties. That's hslda.org. And we have getting started helps, all sorts of things.
Jim Mason, thank you so much for your time. It's hslda.org. Check it out. When we come back, it's not just about education, it's about discipleship. Whatever you choose, we're going to talk about how to disciple your children best. Stay with us here on Washington Watch.
It begins here, and here, and here. Every day. Before you stand, you need solid ground. Standing in a culture that wants you to surrender the truth won't work unless you have a firm foundation. At Family Research Council, we have that firm foundation, and you can find us standing. We stand for the value of all human life. We stand for the right of families to flourish. And every day we stand for your freedom to believe and to live out those beliefs both at home and abroad. We work with government officials, educating them on the issues from a biblical worldview. And when necessary, we hold them accountable. We equip Christians across America to be informed and to take action in their communities. With our daily radio program, television appearances, and vast online presence, we reach people where they are. We envision an America where all human life is valued, families flourish, and religious liberty thrives. And that won't be realized if we're not standing. Stand for faith. Stand for family. Stand for freedom. Stand with us at FRC. King David wrote of God's Word as a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. This is a timeless truth. For those through the centuries that have embraced this truth, they have found the Word of God provides a solid foundation for life. That's why the Family Research Council has embarked upon a 2-year chronological Bible reading plan called Stand on the Word. We've made it easy for you to read through the Bible in 2 years by taking just 10 to 15 minutes, 6 days a week. And to encourage you on the journey, I have a brief 8 to 10 minute devotional each morning, Monday through Friday, that accompanies the reading. You can join me by going to frc.org/Bible. That's frc.org/Bible. Or you can join me on my Facebook page, Tony Perkins, each morning at 8:44 Eastern Time. Again, the website, frc.org/Bible, or on Facebook at Tony Perkins. Join us, and together we will stand on the Word.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm Joseph back home sitting in for Tony today, and this is a special education edition of Washington Watch, and we're so glad to have you with us. Throughout today's show, we've been highlighting the various options that are out there for parents who want to set their...
Hi, I'm Joe Sweeney. I founded the Acervo Project in response to the growing epidemic of human trafficking and child exploitation. Classifying this as an epidemic is an understatement. Our investigation teams and cyber analysts are tracking child predators every day. We're making a difference, but we need your help. The average age of a trafficked child is just 14 years old. Will you join the Acervo Project team? Donate $14 a month to protect the next at-risk 14-year-old. Pledge your $14 a month at theacervoproject.org. That's ASSERVO.org.
Taken TV is making TV watchable again. Join us on the Active Kingdom Entertainment Network. Download Taken TV from your App Store now.